Welcome to the Therapist Burnout Podcast, episode 74. Hey, therapist, welcome back. I am returning to talk with you about my upcoming series, Structured Rest. So, I chose to put this series out during summer because it's a time of year where we want to enjoy it, try to squeeze it all out. Also, I find it can be a time I remember where I was less scheduled in many ways because I didn't have as many clients that came in. And I think the pressure is to, number one, try to fill that time in with like productivity, also with trying to vacation and find rest and find experiences where maybe we're enjoying our life a little bit more. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the series and what you can expect over the next 6 or 7 weeks while I go through this series with you. And I will be uploading all of that into my podcast player. And I am taking a vacation in July. So I hope to have those episodes ready to go for you. So I wrote these notes a couple of weeks ago. I am still working as a psychologist. I left my role as a therapist. If you are just joining this podcast, welcome. I'm Dr. Jen Blanchett, and I closed my practice in 2023 due to burnout, compassion fatigue, moral injury, pandemic, exhaustion, um, all of the things. And I used to say due to burnout only. And now I think I'm qualifying that a little differently because my view of therapist burnout really has changed. And so every year I'm doing an episode likely on how is therapist burnout different because it is different. It is different than regular burnout because we're special. We are. We're a special group of people. And I think we do very unique work. And I think that's the segue into my story because my story this year. I think as mental health professionals, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And essentially, for my main work that I do that brings home money, I function as a consultant in schools. Lack of better terms, I work as a school psychologist. So I work contract for a few school districts in my state. I think it's very different than therapy. I'm not holding space day to day, but it has a different level of stress that I um I have not experienced in my career in other places. So particularly where there is sometimes a few times a year, there is a situation where my conclusions from my report are argued. And this happens every year, usually 1 to 2 times that it happens. And I haven't really had the experience of you make a conclusion, you do your best work, you do research on whatever situation it is, you make a diagnosis. And then people just pretty much tell you you're wrong. and, and that's a hard spot to be in, I think. And maybe earlier in my career, I feel like I wouldn't say I was more resilient because I feel like resiliency is a skill that we can still learn, we can still grow in. But I feel like my body's reaction to some of these experiences is very different after I went through this last extreme bout of burnout where it looked like and part of my burnout was I developed panic disorder. And that happened when I was driving. I went through a year and a half of EMDR therapy and still struggle. I think I'm very open about my own mental health difficulties on here because I know I'm not the only one who struggles with this, and a lot of people don't talk about it openly. And so part of it is, I feel like, giving permission for therapists to seek out their own mental health support. And throughout this year, I've struggled with bouts of anxiety and depression and some acute episodes of depression. I feel like this year, kind of back to this situation, I had another one of those difficult meetings. I was actually, I knew it was coming and I was kind of bracing, I would say, for a few weeks. I also took on too much work, which I tend to do. I was bracing for this meeting and the day came and I promised myself, I promised the part of myself that felt like it was gonna crumble, that vulnerable part of myself. I told it, "I will take care of you later." And I really felt my body, I think, throughout the meeting, just my heart rate was ramping up and my watch buzzed in the meeting to relax, tell myself to breathe. And afterward, I was kind of spinning, felt like I wanted to collapse, felt really vulnerable. I just texted my husband. I was like, I really don't know if I'm cut out for this role. I really don't know if I can do this work anymore. I felt like this time, this has happened before in this work that I've done. This is the work that I went into when I closed my practice. And the overworking part that really felt like it had to figure it out because I didn't want to go back to therapy at the time. And I'm still there. I don't not as fearful of having to go back in my role as a therapist anymore. But there's a part of me that really overworks and really overschedules myself and busies myself to feel like I had to kind of prove myself because I hadn't done testing in quite a while. I mean, I'd done a little bit in my practice, but not like what I do now, not like, you know, 60 evals that I did this past school year. And so that part of me, I think because there was a scarcity that came up around I have to kind of get this competency again. I have to do a bunch of trainings, which I feel like comes up for many of the therapists that I work for to try to figure this out, to try to figure out like what else can I do? And if you find something, it's really trying to make yourself appear competent, make yourself appear that you know what you're doing. What I've noticed a lot this year is that I have judged myself for my body's responses to stress. I still do this. And I think I should be quote unquote better by now or have figured this out by now. And I have really tried to take more of a non judgmental stance, I think, after this recent month that passed, where I pushed myself too hard again. And I think the theme of pushing ourselves or pushing through is just something that therapists tend to do. We will hold space for the client when we're falling apart inside. We will be there for our children when we don't have time for ourselves. We'll be there for our families to fill in the gaps that people won't fill in. And I think if you've had a career for a while, you can do that for so long without taking care of your body's needs. And so the whole point of this is grounded in trauma informed recovery, also nervous system regulation. And I always think of my work with brain injury survivors. So, and I've told you guys this many times, but after a brain injury, many of my clients would judge themselves for not being able to do things they used to be able to do. So let's say they worked an 80-hour day and after their brain injury, they could work for 2 hours and they would have a lot of shame or self judgment about not being able to do the same level of work they did before. And my job in that context was really to help them zoom out and see that they have a different brain and body now, that their body's capacity is just what it is. And I use the metaphor frequently that before your coffee cup was like a 32-ounce big old honking coffee cup. And now you have like the espresso shot of capacity of what you can hold. And so I come back to this frequently of my holder is just not the same that it was before. And we can do things to grow our capacity, but that takes time and thus the reason why we need this. So this is also grounded in much of the work that I did with my brain injury survivors of trying to help them grow their capacity for stress, for being able to work longer, which was their goal, and also just to live their lives. So it wasn't always the goal to get back to work or to figure out all the things that they could do to, and sometimes it was because that's survival. They needed to work to make more money. They needed to work to live, to afford the things in their lives. Like that is just reality. But when they constantly push themselves to the brink of collapse, consequences would happen. And for my survivors, a lot of times that meant they would be in the bed for a day or two. And I don't have as big of a crash as that, but I will lose a half a day at work. I will need to do a lot of regulation because I have not structured my week in a way that my body can manage. And so I think this will help you, therapist, if you are in that place where you're still working, you still have to pay the bills, you still have to do this work. Or if you're in burnout recovery and your body is giving you big old nudges that you need to slow down. And mine did give me huge nudges in the form of a panic disorder. So I think we're all in different places with this and just with the nature of modern society. I think we're in a different place where there's just so much coming at us all the time that we have to do this work just to manage modern life. So I think this will benefit you in whatever stage you're in. I think the truth that I have to keep coming back to is that we can't heal, recover, or make decisions from a place of chronic fatigue or collapse. And frequently, I have therapists reach out to me and tell me, Jen, I need to figure this out. Like, I have to find other ways to make money or other things to do. And I just can't do this anymore. And I'm like, I know. And it's hard to make a life decision from a place of chronic fatigue and collapse. So, these are the skills I need you to build, and I'm going to tie them right back to what you're feeling. So a lot of these are mirrored back to me in the emails that I get, in the comment threads that I get on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, by the way, Dr. Jen Blanchette, and I post all the time about burnout stuff and just life too. So I think simple self-care is stress management. And I got that. I think when I heard Kate Donovan say this, that much of what we are hearing is burnout prevention is stress management. If you're listening to this podcast, you're beyond stress management. Okay. Unless you're like a new student and you're like, I don't want to burn out. So I'm just going to kind of educate myself, which I'm glad for you if you're here. But that's not the majority of my people, I think. You need burnout recovery. And so your body is already giving you indications that you need to do something differently. And going back to my story, of that part of me that felt like it was going to come undone in this meeting, we want it to tell us that. It's doing its job because it feels like I'm putting it in threat again. And it doesn't want us to do that. It wants us to survive. Our bodies are designed to help us survive a threat. So it doesn't know that that huge meeting full of people, they were not a cheetah or, a lion that was coming to attack us or oncoming traffic. We have the same internal body responses that happen similarly. When I was still a therapist, my body was responding to the sound of my door in my office. My body would be keyed up, not knowing, what is this client going to bring up today? Am I going to be able to hold it? Is my body going to have so many reactions that I don't know if I can really deal with that? Now I've talked many times about in the pandemic pulling up to my office and my body telling me, I don't want to get out of this car. I don't want to go in there. And time after time, I put one foot in front of the other and I did it. And we can just do that for so long, right? Until we have to do something differently. So that's the reason burnout recovery is increasing safety in the body. It's you telling that part of ourselves when I told her, I'm going to take care of you later, to actually do that, to actually take care of yourself later. And that's daily action, weekly action, monthly action, quarterly action, yearly action, and increasing that safety is by keeping the promise to yourself that you're not going to push yourself to chronic fatigue, and you're not going to let yourself be fried. So back in episode 71, check that episode out. I did that back in May. And I talk a little bit about why we wait until we're burnt. Because I talk about the research on interoception that therapists struggle. We are able to recognize our body cues more readily, but we struggle to intervene for our body. So we really need structure to be able to do this. So I start to talk about this in episode 65, Overbooked and Overwhelmed. Unbook your calendar. That's episode 65. Sorry, I'm originally from the South, but I grew up in the DC Metro, so sometimes I get really weird. So episode 65, check that out. I will tell podcast listeners to check that one out if they're really just keyed up and feeling like you're really hypervigilant, right? I got to that place at the end of my practice. And burnout, that ability to interocept, to understand what's going on in our body and do something about it, we override our signals. We stop noticing what's happening in our body. This framework is gently going to start bringing that back online, right? Not pushing through, no fixing, just noticing what's happening and really noticing your body's cues and responding. And this can be as simple as, many times we're just rushing through our lives, and it frequently happens when I'm at the grocery store or I don't know where I was. I was holding, like I had to pee. And I've been holding like, okay, I'm at the grocery store. I'll just wait till I get home, which is gonna be another 30 minutes. And then I was actually having stomach pain from not going to the bathroom at the grocery store because I just needed to go, but I wanted to get through because I had to get dinner and all the things, right? I have kids. And so I'm going to the bathroom. If I have to go to the bathroom, I'm listening to my body, and I haven't had as many stomach pains from holding my bladder, which is like, I feel like the size of a small egg because I drink water and then I have to go all the time. And yeah, you're not extra for needing to go to the bathroom. You just go. And also, I think sometimes with burnout prevention and stress management, we think, I just need to rest. I just need to have some time where I don't need to do anything. The problem with that is with a mental health day or a vacation or a extended break is that we're not setting up our lives to have the structure that we need to manage what's happening day to day, week to week. And so it is a little stress management, but also it's listening to your body and your safety cues. So I think if we take that break, that's great. And we might feel some relief for a couple days to a week. But if we're not changing the structure of our lives, whether that be leaving your role as a therapist, whether that be really doing a deep dive in your caseload. And I do this often with my therapist clients where we take a deep dive into their caseload. And my first question is, are they meeting treatment goals anymore? That is a very simple question. I get like long stares like, you are attacking me right now, Jen. And I'm like, I am not attacking you because I was you. Okay. I know many of us get stuck in patterns with people because they become part of our daily lives in some ways in our mind space, right? They're not in our lives as people that we interact with every day, but they are the regular cadence with us, right? Okay, on Mondays I see Sally and Sally's sessions, and we go through all the things that she's going on, and we just get into bad habits, I think, of doing crisis of the day and not bringing it back to treatment goals. So ethically, that is right there in ethical code. Is the client no longer benefiting from the service? And so it's a very simple question to ask. It is our ethical imperative then to make some decisions, especially if that is a client that we can't hold anymore due to our own countertransference reactions that are coming up with that particular client. Or perhaps they need another service. They're no longer benefiting from maybe the therapeutic kitchen sink that you have thrown at them, and it's time for a break. So, I really have you think just on that piece about your your schedule. So that's what I do often is looking at the structure of your practice, the structure of your work, if you're staying in the work, and taking some time. So my term for structured rest is a weekly practice where we look at our whole week. So open your calendar, open everything that you have to do in the week. We're going to brain dump. Brain dumps are grounded in neuroscience. There are so many running scrolls of things that we feel like we need to do. And maybe it's like I remember I was talking to one of my tennis friends and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I can make it to that thing before because I need to run by Goodwill. I have some clothes that I need to, donate." They're like, "Jen, how long have those clothes been in the back of your car?" I was like a week. Like they're still gonna be there. They just come. And I was like, "Fine, you're right. Okay. I don't have to do that right now." So it's looking at those things after you do a brain dump, and we'll, go over more of this of why that's important to just take things out. We don't understand how much we are holding. And most of my work with people is to help them reduce their cognitive load. Because what I know is that you can't put anything back into your calendar if if it's, I'm just like adding another thing for you to do, essentially. Yeah, go do a yoga class, go, get with your friend that you don't have because I haven't nurtured that relationship. No, you need to create space to be able to plant something new, to start something new. So I'm going to go over that process of really pruning your life, taking things out that you don't need to do anymore. And I think for me, when I was closing my practice, a lot of it felt like I was constantly taking things out of my schedule, constantly removing things. And I felt like I would never get in a season where I add anything again because I felt like I just couldn't hold anything. But it was necessary, completely necessary. And I think going back to my folks, my survivors that I worked with from brain injury, they also felt like they weren't living their lives because they couldn't do anything. They felt like, okay, what I can work for an hour, I can, go to a function for 10 minutes. And what is that doing? And I said, well, every time you honor your body, you're going to grow your capacity like 1%. So keep honoring what your body is telling you. And slowly over time, your capacity will grow. And I don't know what that's going to look like specifically for your brain and body because they are all different. But the more you honor that and just lean into this is where I am right now. This is what I need to do now for myself, for my body. I think the easier it's going to be, but it is also what we say to ourselves, how we talk to ourselves about what our needs are, and to stop judging yourself for what you actually need. So, over the series, we're going to talk about taking things away. Just don't do the things that you don't need to do anymore. What can you let go of? And then we're going to talk about 6 different areas of things you can put in. And it's like a menu. Sometimes we won't get to all of that, but it's the intention, right? It's the intention of these are the things these are the core needs that I need as a human. These are things like movement, rest, connection, time with nature, forward progress, and something that's meaningful to me. So scheduling that like we would schedule a client. And then naming what are your burnout recovery practices? How are you helping yourself? And that could be, well, some of my burnout recovery practices are for me, it's going to, I teach yoga, I'm a personal trainer. I often am the person that leads things. In my consultant role, I hold a lot of responsibility and I make a lot of decisions that are difficult. So there's time where I need to be led. I need to be the student. I need to be the one who is allowed to be in a container. So that's really important. That's right now one of my biggest recovery practices is being a yoga student, is allowing myself to walk in my neighborhood without earbuds in, without needing to do a podcast, without needing to have all the things. I mean, listen to my podcast. But you know what I mean. Most therapists that I talk to are working on about 2 to 3 certifications at a time. They're like, okay, I need to have more knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge. And part of that, I think, I think knowledge is great, but there is just too much information today, and so it is titrating what we need, titrating the information that we put in, because there is way too much input in modern life. So you'll notice the past 2 weeks, I did not record a podcast episode. I definitely pushed myself to a breaking point again in May, and what that looks like, it just, anxiety and burnout and your body just changes what it wants to do. So it's been showing up for me in more depression this year. And I think when it first happened at the beginning in January for me, I was shocked. I was like, huh, what is this again? I I know I dealt with some bouts of depression, through the acute phases of my burnout. And I actually thought I was burnout again, like frying. And it was depression, which I talked about a couple of times on this podcast. Is it burnout or is it depression? Check back. So episode 70, I did another burnout or depression episode about getting granular about what you're actually experiencing. And if you need mental health support, definitely seek those out and what you need. But part of this most recent bout was really taking on too much from scarcity and putting a lot of pressure on myself again with this podcast, with the amount of money that I need to make to bring in to just run our lives in our home. And so I understand that pressure because I live it, right? I think many of us we don't have the situation where we can just not work. That is not my situation. And so I am committing to coming back to this. I frequently have to come back to I frequently push in a direction, and I need to counterbalance back to bring myself back. And with my contract work, that happens in the spring typically. So I really need to look at the year, right? And so part of me is I'm going to hire an assistant in the fall to help me with the podcast, to help me in my contract work, because I think I can actually be able to do more with less stress on me and my body and still earn at least the same amount of income if I actually get some help. Which I support you doing. If you need help, get help if you can in your business with billing. That was when I had a practice, I recommend getting a biller because I substantiate that by looking at like how much money I actually brought in, more than paid for that biller. So that was money well spent if I just did an extra session and I'm not the one dealing with the billing or I had an insurance-based practice when I came off of panels and stuff like that, but I still had an insurance-based practice, which meant haggling with insurance companies and looking at getting paid and figuring out why they didn't pay. So having someone do all of that, which I was not an expert in and did my own billing for 7-ish years, was a much better use of my time to just see another client one extra client more than paid for that. So anyway, get support if you need it. That can be another way that you think about, yeah, I do need help. I have made some commitments to myself, and I wonder if you can start to make some commitments to yourself. Is there one thing that you might need? One thing right now, even right now, to pause this podcast if you're not driving. Take a breath. What is one thing that you could tell yourself you can commit to right now that's going to help you feel more rest, feel more grounded? So pause the podcast, take a breath, and just write that down or give yourself a voice note in your phone. and come back to me. So for me, I hope you did that. And before I go into mine, I hope you made a commitment of something that you can do right now. For me, I came up with a several of things that I could commit to. And for me, that's taking a yoga class instead of leading one. I didn't make it this week, but I did take a strength class, which I hurt my shoulder with, which was not a great choice. So I'm thinking about that choice that I made to not go to that yoga class I'm in right now as I'm saying this, because that's what I actually told myself I needed. So next week it's on the schedule. So I'm going to put it in my schedule, napping when I need it. So sometimes I just need to lay down and set the timer for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. I often did this when I had my therapy practice. This is why therapists have couches, so we can take naps. Because sometimes I remember just not being like, I felt like literally my eyes were closing and I would get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but my body was just fatigued. And it would tell me 10 minutes. So I would set a 10-minute timer just to close my eyes. Sometimes I ended a session early and just let the client leave. And this is where I was. I mean, real talk. And then just close my eyes, put a 10-minute timer on, and give myself a couple minutes until my next client came in because that's what I literally needed in the moment. Sometimes you need a real lunch break, not your sad salad at your desk while you're multitasking. Okay. So we're done with sad salads here. I'm going to be posting about sad salads on LinkedIn because I don't know where I heard it somewhere in someone's post and I wish I could give them credit, but I don't remember where I saw it. But this is like inside of me now. Don't eat at your desk. It takes literally 10 minutes to eat. We all have 10 minutes. Give yourself that time to let your body reset in the middle of your day and eat. Please, your body will thank you. Okay. And meditation. So for me, it's just that yoga class, that 5 minutes at the end of the yoga class where I am going to do the meditation. And actually, I did another one this week where it's just more powerful when I take a class than if I do something online, like an online yoga class or body. I do Body Balance by Les Mills, which I like. And actually, because they have lyrical music, which is really grounded in neuroscience. So when we hear lyrical music, it's very regulating. So anytime you can put on some lyrical music, that's just melodic music. A lot of different genres have melodic music. So they could be like a Disney song. It could be like a singer-songwriter. You see that in country, you see that in R&B. There's a lot of different genres that have a melodic quality to the music that's lyrical. Also think of sometimes when we hear music done to ballet or to like a modern contemporary dance piece, it's done to lyrical music because it's evocative and it's also melodic. So that range in the up and down in melody and music is very regulating to the nervous system. So think about that. I have to be mindful because sometimes when I'm in a low mood state, I tend to listen to sad girl songs. What my husband calls them, like, "Are you having a sad girl moment where you do that?" Sometimes that's good for me when I listen to evocative kind of moody music when I'm doing like a yoga flow, but I have to be mindful that sometimes I tend to, especially when I'm in that mood state, go into that. And so thinking of like music can help reinforce a mood state. So some of my clients, I remember them be like, "I love metal. When I'm angry, it just helps me get out." I was like, "Well, it's going to intensify whatever mood state you're in. So if you're angry, it's going to intensify it. If you're sad, some of that sad music intensifies that emotion. If we're feeling joyous music is going to help to intensify that." So sometimes I think of counterbalancing when I need energy, maybe I'm going to listen to I have like a hype, um, lifting mix that I listen to when I lift weights, so sometimes I try to listen to that. When I'm in a low mood state, it's really hard for me to get there, so even if I listen to it, it doesn't do much. But having you think of that counterbalance even in your music, and, sometimes for me, it's regulating to hear, like, my favorite podcaster and just hear their voice. hear them say, like, whatever things they're talking about. They can talk about nothing, which sometimes I feel some type of way talking about my life. But maybe it's helpful to you. I hope so. That was just a deep dive into music. Sidebar, squirrel moment. One thing for me has been staying off apps that steal my joy. And maybe I'll talk more about that. But I think for all of us, the lure of our phone and the dopamine reactions we get from scrolling or from interacting with things or people that aren't really helpful to us, I think it's important to look at, important to acknowledge for you. Is there something, an app or an interaction online that is taking your energy? So for me, it has been deleting some apps from my phone. I love Cal Newport's work on digital minimalism. So if you need a reference for that, go into his work. I love all of his work. He has a podcast as well. For me, also tending to my sadness, to my depression. And I'm over this summer going to look at what I need to do around that, like how I can be more regulated with regard to my mood. If that looks like medication or trying different things, that's what I'm going to do because it was a pretty rough bout over the winter and spring for me with regard to just how my depression shows up. So for you, what do you need around your emotional states? Do you need your own therapist? Do you need a medication provider, perhaps? Is that something you need? Then allowing yourself to access that is what I would recommend. I think lastly, living your damn life. This week, my oldest had his fifth grade promotion to middle school. And I think we have these moments in our lives where we're just reminded with time and just how precious it is and how fast it tends to go as we age. And I walked, my oldest son was at school, and my mother in law picked up my youngest son to go to the little ceremony, the step up promotion. And I walked down this path with my husband, and I was just like, wow, we'll be here in like 6 or 7 years to go to high school graduation with our oldest. And yeah, time is precious, and those experiences are precious. And I know I only have like 7 more years with my oldest. And I think of the mom that I want to be for him in these next 7 years. And it isn't one that's overscheduled. It isn't one that is sad. So I would just have you reflect on, as we go into a new season, it's often a marker for us. And maybe you've had some of those experiences with your own children or in your life. Maybe you've lost someone in your life. Maybe you have had one of those markers that have popped up for you that you're just like, wow, time is going. This is your life. And just thinking really about your needs and who you want to show up for yourself, for your family, for the people in your life. I also want to bring us up a little bit. So, what I've noticed about the people that write into me, they're burnout. You're burnout. Yeah. You're also a visionary, many of you. Even in exhaustion, I hear from therapists that something inside of you still needs to be shared, that you want to create something. And I think what I want you to hear from the series that I'm about to give you is that it will help you gain capacity to figure out what your next steps are. Also, if you want to build something. So, some of the people that the therapists that I've worked with that have been my clients, they are now building things. So, I help them close their practices or I help them kind of get through an extreme bout of burnout. And they're working to build something, whether that be with coaching or some kind of direction. That's a theme that I notice with folks that I work with. Maybe they want to do a podcast themselves. Um, and I have been honestly kind of reluctant to push people in that direction. And I'm seeing that differently now because maybe they're me when I was burnout. And I don't think you could have stopped me from doing a podcast. There's no way you could have stopped me from doing this. So I think the stance I'm taking is these are the people that I'm drawing from my work. And I want to speak to those people too. You don't have to build anything after burnout. You can, live your damn life and do whatever you want to do. Get a job. I don't care what you do, but I want you to live the life that you want to live for yourself and for your family. So if that is building a podcast or things online, great. If it's not, if it's no, I just want to get a job where I feel like at the end of the day, I'm not done. Like I don't have anything left, then that's great. I want you to have that too. But also there's these people that have something inside of them that feels like needs to come out. And so I hear you and I hear that. And I hope this will help you build the capacity to do those things. So I hope what you've taken away from today is that you don't have to fix everything. We're going to think about practices, not mental health days, not self care moments. I mean, self care is great, but we need to really build safety in our bodies and in our lives. And perhaps talking to that vulnerable part of us that if you're gonna push yourself, that you'll take care of yourself later and do it. And do it. Just take care of yourself. All right, therapist. As I usually tell you, if you want to connect with me more, I have a pen pal list, and that is my email list, essentially. So I write to you weekly and I give you more of the juicy bits from my life, even more vulnerable shares than this, which is hard to imagine, but they are. So, just a preview, I am building a private practice closure course in the background. I am excited to bring it to you guys. It is definitely the thing I needed, and it's not work that I thought that I would do, honestly, is helping people leave things. But I think it dovetails interestingly with my expertise, in EMDR therapy and a lot of grief work that I did for folks after brain injury is helping them like grieve those parts of themselves that they lost. And that work mirrors so interestingly with therapists. So I know it's going to be helpful for the people that need it. And yeah, I'm just excited to share it when it happens. I'll leave you with that. And I hope when this drops that you are enjoying the start of your summer and find some rhythms in the next month or so. They're going to help you connect to yourself, bring safety to your body, and more peace to your life. That is my hope for you, therapist. Have a good one.